Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Mariam Bilgrami and I am the coordinator of the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership in BC. I would like to begin today by respectfully acknowledging that I live, work and play on unceded Coast Salish territories that belong to the Tsleil-Waututh, Stolo, Quinte, Tsuut'ina and Musqueam nations. As a settler on these stolen lands, I am grateful to be here while acknowledging I'm here without the permission of those who these lands belong to. Please take a moment today to think of the privileges we enjoy while living on these stolen lands. Today's plenary, the evolving role of LIPs and RIFs in responding to crises and new challenges, is directly in response to not only the current crises and challenges we face at the time of COVID, but also a chance to reflect on the evolving iterative roles that LIPs and RIFs have played in response to previous crises and challenges and the learnings from those. And now I am honored to present to you today's plenary speakers in order of events. We will begin with Samantha Burdett, who is the coordinator for the Calgary Local Immigration Partnership, also known as the CLIP. Prior to the CLIP, she worked with the Local Diversity and Immigration Partnership Council in the Ferro region, just east of Toronto. Today, she'll be drawing on her experience with both LIPs. The title of the presentation is Connections, Collaborations, and Community, How LIPs Respond in a Crisis, and will cover the importance of relationships and trust building to laying the foundation for LIPs to support and respond to community needs in a crisis, with a highlight on the Syrian refugee response in Calgary and in Durham, the response to COVID, as well as how COVID has changed how the LIP will be working moving forward. Next up will be Kat Fisher-Andrews, who is the coordinator of the Quinte Local Immigration Partnership located in Belleville, Ontario. While Kat is quite new to the LIP role, as am I, she worked for the Quinte Immigration Services as a settlement worker for 7 years previous to her role as the LIP coordinator. And joining her is Orlando Ferro, who is the Quinte Local Immigration Partnership administrator for the Quinte Immigration Services. Their presentation is focused on networking in rural and urban settings, covering a large demographic region in times of crisis. Next up will be Agnes Jeru, the coordinator for Immigration Partnership Saskatoon, IPSK. Agnes has worked for immigrant settlement in Toronto and Kingston in Ontario prior to IPSK. The title of the presentation is See Me As I Am, and Agnes will share the experiences of a young LIP mobilizing the community on Why Care in response to new challenges through the hashtag Be an Ally campaign. And lastly, before I pass it on to Samantha, please make sure to go to slido.com and use the code P2P2020. Ask questions, upvote questions that you'd like to see answered, and please feel free to ask these questions beginning immediately and throughout the presentations, as well as in English and French. Our presenters are really looking forward to answering your questions and making sure that we keep this as interactive as possible, even though we are virtual. So with all of that, I will pass it over to Samantha.
Hi, everyone. It's been a great couple of days at P2P. My brain is definitely still processing all the ideas, which is great. I really miss seeing you in person, though, so fingers crossed, next year we'll meet up at the Westin in Ottawa. So I'm just going to share my screen. And so thank you so much for joining us for this session. As Mariam said, my name is Sam Burdett. My pronouns are she, her. I'm speaking with you today on Treaty 7 territory, home of the Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, Tsuut'ina, Stoney Nakoda, and Métis Nation Region 3. I acknowledge the land I'm on as a treaty person and a settler on this land, and as a commitment to reconciliation. I've been working with the Calgary LIP for 2 years, and prior to CLIP, I worked with the Durham LIP, just east of Toronto. When I was reflecting on my experience working with LIPs in times of crisis, I came to the same conclusion that I'm sure many of you have come to as well. So much of what we do comes down to relationships and trust. One of the priority areas in the CLIP strategic plan is around building the social capital of newcomers. And in many ways, the success of a LIP depends on the social capital of the LIP staff. This was really apparent to me when I moved from Ontario to Calgary 2 years ago. I was moving from one LIP to another, and so while the mechanics and knowledge of policy and processes were transferable, my biggest challenge when I got to Calgary was that complete loss of social capital. This afternoon, I just want to reflect a little bit on how important the building and nurturing of relationships is to the work we do, especially in times of crisis. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. Oh, it's a little slow, sorry about that. A little context to start. Calgary, nearly a third of the population in Calgary was not born in Canada. Calgary is home to more than 240 different ethnocultural groups, with over 1/3 of Calgarians identifying as a visible minority, as racialized, in the last census. We expect that number to go up. In terms of countries of origin, in the last census, the top 3 countries were the Philippines, India, and China. Again, we're expecting changes in the next census, likely to see Syria, Nigeria, and countries in East Africa show up in those top sort of 5. We all know why immigration is important to Canada. And the ultimate goal of CLIP is to help new immigrants settle into Calgary faster and more effectively so that they can contribute to building a vibrant economy and healthy, inclusive communities. CLIP is made up of about 120 community partners. Senior leaders in the community representing 19 different sectors sit on the CLIP Council. The CLIP working groups were set up to implement the action plan, and they mirror the 5 priorities identified by the community: economic well-being, employment, language, social capital, and social inclusion. The CLIP Immigrant Advisory Table provides firsthand experience and insight on living as an immigrant in Calgary. This expertise is used to inform and support our strategic and action planning. But what is CLIP all about? It's about connections, collaborations, and building community. We all know that as LIPs, we don't have any way to make community partners work with us. It's all carrot with no stick. And I know there's different opinions on where LIPs are best housed, whether that's in a SPO, in a local not-for-profit, or in a municipality. So I'll declare my bias right now, both with CLIP and with Durham. My experience has been working in a LIP that's housed within a municipality. And I really do see that as a huge benefit in times of crisis. One of the most important relationships we have is with the City of Calgary. In creating and implementing strategic priorities, CLIP has been able to build on the expertise, experience, and engagement activities of other municipal initiatives. We've been able to leverage the relationships and networks of the city's community social workers, recreation and culture teams, and communication and website teams. In the work we do as LIPs, we're always working in collaboration with agencies, organizations, and institutions from multiple sectors to achieve shared goals. These are some photos from our financial wellness fair a year ago. The CLIP working group that orchestrated this event engaged with over 25 community partners to put it on, and it was really successful. As the lead, the fact that CLIP did what it said it would on time and to a high standard really contributed to building good relationships and building trust with those community partners. And we were able to draw on those relationships when the current crisis struck. So what happens in a large city like Calgary when a major crisis does hit? Calgary is an incredibly resilient city. The boom and bust nature of the economy has necessitated an attitude of pulling together when things get rough. And that center photo is the community call for volunteers during the 2013 floods in Calgary. In the space of a few hours, volunteers literally filled the parking lot at McMahon Stadium, which is where the Stampeders football team plays. This community resilience brings newcomers and others together in times of crisis, and ethnocultural organizations are often at the front end of community response. Many of our ethnocultural groups are doing the heavy lifting during the current pandemic. They're running food banks, delivering culturally appropriate food hampers, cooking for families who are ill, having outdoor coffee meetups, and even running a free outdoor multicultural library. And just an aside, thanks to the Calgary Herald and the province of Alberta for some of the photos that I'm using in the slide deck. So what role do LIPs play in responding to a crisis? I was working with the LDIPSI in Durham during the Syrian refugee response. And like many of your LIPs, we played a significant role in readying the community for the arrival of the new families. Our major settlement agency had just had a change in senior leadership at the time, and so in many ways, the LIP took the lead in the community response. We provided policy and background briefs to local politicians. We developed a network for private sponsors to support them as they completed paperwork, organized fundraisers, found housing and furniture. We were the connectors between the municipalities, agencies, organizations, and the public. We were the touchstone for questions on the refugee process because our community partners trusted us to have the answers or to know where to go to find them, because we had a solid track record as community partner they could rely on. In Calgary, like so many other cities, they were quick to jump into action in response to the Syrian refugee crisis. CLIP was very new at the time, but they worked closely with city officials and with community partners to support the arrival of many Syrian families. CLIP mapped locations of where Syrians were living in the city to provide information to service providers. CLIP held a Newcomers welcome event targeted to Syrian new arrivals with translators and interpreters on site. And CLIP worked with IRCC in convening a group of service providers to submit proposals for some summer programming for Syrian children and youth. Again, playing that key role of connector, facilitator, and convener. And so that brings us to 2020. As I mentioned, my biggest challenge after moving to Calgary was establishing relationships with CLIP's community partners. I was the fourth CLIP coordinator in 2 years, so there was a wee bit of hesitancy on the part of our community partners to fully engage. I spent the first year as the CLIP coordinator doing a lot of listening, one-on-one and in groups. I attended community collaborative meetings, visited agencies and organizations, and learned who did what and where. I figured out who were the movers and shakers in the community and where potential tensions lay. I asked a lot of questions. By the end of my first year, we had a good team of working group members, an amazing IAT, pretty solid council, and a network of other community agencies who we were in regular contact with. And we had a fabulous plan for a year of face-to-face community conversations with Calgarians. Then COVID hit. For the first 3 months of the pandemic, I was on the crisis response team for Calgary neighborhoods within the city of Calgary. We met every morning at 8 a.m. to talk about the latest news, community needs, and how we could facilitate a coordinated response. I was the liaison between the settlement sector, Newcomers, and the city of Calgary. It was quickly apparent that there were 3 key priorities for Newcomers in Calgary: access to information in home languages, access to technology, and food security, very similar to, I'm sure, what you faced in your own communities. I remember sitting on my couch one evening and I was reading through an email I'd received from the province, you know, me and 100,000 other people, and it included a number of translated PDFs, really important information we needed to share with our community partners, but the size of the email was pretty big. I remember thinking, this is great, but there's going to be a lot more of these, and all of these PDFs need to be in one spot. I checked and they hadn't been posted, so I just created a page on the CLIP website. Right then and there, posted them and then shared the URL with our community partners. That being able to act quickly and decisively was really important. The page kind of snowballed as the first weeks went on. I convened a meeting with other LIPs in Alberta to see what languages they needed. We didn't want everybody reinventing the wheel. We ended up with 16 priority languages and worked with our settlement agencies who did the translations pro bono. We were sent and gathered information from other jurisdictions to get as much information in home languages as we could and hosted it all on the CLIP website. As you know, IRCC and the provinces all then picked up that kind of work, but within those first few weeks, that was a role that we played in the community. The settlement sector, with the active support of IRCC, did a stellar job in responding to the crisis. The speed with which they got services and programs online was incredible. But it led to an urgent call for devices. Newcomer families needed laptops, tablets, phones. They weren't alone. So many seniors and low-income families were in the same boat. On the city crisis response calls, we were able to share who needed what, where, and who was offering up resources. And because I was at that table, I was able to be the go-between between the loan of hundreds of Chromebooks from the Calgary Public Library to local settlement agencies. It was quite the operation. I literally filled my car, and I do mean completely filled it, with Chromebooks. I then pulled up in the back alleys behind the agencies, put on my mask and my gloves, called upstairs, then popped the trunk and handed over the goods. After a month or so of lockdown, I have to admit it was the most fun I'd had in weeks. The food security team at the city did amazing work, and CLIP was able to facilitate conversations and information sharing between the food distribution networks and settlement agencies and ethnocultural groups. We were able to share information with both as new initiatives came to light and passed on requests for assistance up the chain of command of crisis response. The levels of cooperation, collaboration, and flexibility were pretty amazing. So CLIP's role during those early days of the pandemic were very much as that community connector. Who's doing what, where, and what additional supports do they need? And delivering on the solutions, or at least information, again, back to building that trust and relationships. As we came out of the state of emergency, that initial sense of urgency abated a bit, and we've all learned to work in this new state of normal. The crisis infrastructure that was put in place seems to be holding, and our new role is to continue monitoring and information sharing on a practical level, but also to highlight the stories of resilience, celebrate organizations, and amplify voices to ensure that newcomers are part of the story we tell about how resilient Calgarians were during the pandemic. I think pivot is going to be my top word for 2020. We're all doing it. We're now going back to our regular work plan, more or less, but we're doing things differently. And so we pivot. Instead of an in-person financial wellness fair, tomorrow it's going virtual. We have 8 workshops lined up, and fingers crossed that technology is going to cooperate. Instead of an in-person Newcomers City Hall school event, we have City Hall in a box on the CLIP website where groups can download materials. We're sharing information differently. We printed, at our community partners' request, we printed 2,000 copies of the Calgary Newcomer Guide for Service Providers early in 2020. The print copies physically arrived in mid-March. You can see the problem there. Last month, we finally distributed them to our community partners, but it's the last time we'll print the directory. All of that information will be made available through the brand new Welcome to Alberta app that's been developed by Immigrant Services Calgary. And speaking of information sharing, I just wanted to give you a quick update on the LIP data dashboard and some, again, pivoting that we've done in the work around that. The LIP data dashboard is an online tool that IRCC funded CLIP to build a few years ago for the LIPs and the PNT. This year, the dashboard moved to a new platform and was expanded to include all LIPs in Canada. And in a nutshell, the dashboard includes all census data related to immigration, plus a couple of additional data sets at each LIP's custom geography, which is the important part. Both the 2006 and the 2016 census data sets are included. But one of the things that was missing as we're having conversations around how to combat racism and what that's going to look like, we realized that one of the things that was missing from the data sets was information on newcomer populations who identify as a visible minority, who are racialized. And that's critical information for all of us as we moved into our anti-racism work moving forward. So that data, we bought the data from StatsCan, it's just arrived, and it'll be uploaded to the dashboard in the next couple of weeks. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the dashboard, the URL is lipdata.ca. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. The increased activity in the community around anti-racism and Black Lives Matter has further galvanized the CLIP Collaborative. We've held a number of conversations with the CLIP Council, our IAT, and our working groups as we explore CLIP's role in combating racism in the city. Being sincere, authentic, and transparent in our work to combat racism will be critical in maintaining existing relationships with our community partners and in building new relationships with emerging networks and new collaborations. We need to do our own homework. We need to listen, and we need to take concrete action. Only then are we going to see real change in our communities. We are convening differently, we're organizing differently, we're prioritizing what's emerging in the community as we look forward to our work plan for 2021. What has not changed, and what we're doing the same, is listening, talking, convening, and facilitating collaborations across sectors. Our ultimate goal is always top of mind, supporting newcomers and the agencies, organizations, and institutions who serve them to make Calgary home. And just one quick final note on the value of LIPs and RIFs working together. Whether it's been through convening the Alberta LIPs, the PNT Network, Base Camp, or through the LIP National Secretariat, having that community of colleagues to connect with has also just been invaluable during the Syrian crisis, during the whole COVID-19 crisis. So a huge thank you to everyone who's part of those networks, and thank you again for your time today. I am now going to pass it over to Kat and the Quinte team.
Good afternoon. My name is Kat Fisher-Andrews, and I'm the coordinator of the Quinte Local Immigration Partnership located in Belleville, Ontario. I also have with me today our Executive Director, Orlando Ferro of Quinte Immigration Services, who will be available to answer any questions together with me at the end of the presentation. Today, I'm going to talk about how our local immigration partnership operates in terms of our relationships, geography, and positioning within the community. One of our main concerns is to ensure that we are recognizing and addressing any gaps that may exist in servicing newcomers in our community, and to ensure that if there are similar programs already running, that we avoid duplication. Specifically, we're going to look at what happens in times of crisis such as these. How do we network in rural and small urban settings that cover large demographic areas? Our role is to support settlement needs in both rural and urban settings with limited resources. To give you a brief look at our local community, first I should point out that QLIP is housed within the only settlement service that serves the region, which is Quinte Immigration Services. The region has a vast catchment area with one service provider covering 4 counties. So if you look at the map, which is kind of small and hard to see, but on the left or into the west, you'll see it covers part of Northumberland County. It covers Hastings County, south to Prince Edward County, and parts of Lennox and Addington County. There's 24 wards and municipalities, and of course, this is a mix of rural and urban areas, with our hub urban areas being the cities of Belleville and Quinte West. We have an average of about 850 newcomers moving to the region every year. So as I mentioned, we're housed within the settlement service in the region, which actually gives us some advantages when administering a local immigration partnership. One of those advantages is that newcomers benefit from a more efficient and accurate exchange between the LIP and our agency. This allows us to more quickly be able to exchange and check the accuracy of information. Program boundaries are not rigid and communication is more fluid. So for example, we don't have to negotiate with outside settlement agencies about where our services end and settlement begins, or vice versa, because we're within the same organization. We have direct access to data obtained by settlement services and frontline workers, which allows us to make decisions more quickly and easily. And this also makes it easier to identify gaps in services and promote solutions due to our relationship with the frontline workers and the information they're providing to us. However, together with those advantages, our main concern is the importance of networking with our local, regional, and provincial networks when designing new initiatives. So this is our governance model, and it gives you an idea of how we work with our stakeholders and networks in a general sense. So starting from the bottom in the green squares, we have the municipal, federal, and provincial governments, which provide funding and support to us. We then have our standalone coordination, facilitation, and administrative services in the blue bubble just above. And then above that, we have our partner organizations. Within that, we can come up with a shared vision and identify outcomes. And then the teams that we work with can then use some of that information to provide innovative responses to challenges and opportunities. So we have healthcare services, education, economic development and labor market integration, accessibility and legal services, and social services and advocacy. This is another model of our working groups. It actually is more defining of our actual working groups and networks, and shows exactly who we are working with right now. This model shows that we have 60 partners. We actually have 67. This model hasn't been updated really recently, because that's a very new figure for us. So we do have a large list here if you wanted to look back on that later. The vast geographical and demographic region covered by QLIP requires us to consider a wide range of interests. And the most common allies that support our efforts are municipalities and economic development offices, community development groups, service delivery stakeholders, those that are delivering services directly to clients, health services, legal services, community groups such as churches and service club organizations, local foundations. We have an example there of our Parrot Foundation, local, regional, and national media, as well as social media networks. And then we have several resources that you can find online at our website, qlip.ca. Sorry, quintelip.ca. One of the things that we've had to do as an LIP is respond to crisis. The Syrian refugee crisis that took place in 2015 in Canada is our most recent example of how we organized a response in the Quinte region, the current crisis notwithstanding. In August 2015, Canada announced they would be taking Syrian refugees, and there were alarming media reports of mass exodus of Syrians from the conflict zone, and many people were perishing trying to escape. In our community, there was a call for mobilization. So in September 2015, QLIP and QUIS had initial meetings with staff, volunteers, and communication with the board of directors to discuss the possible change in the government policy regarding increasing numbers of Syrian refugees to Canada. So in order to respond to the crisis, we did a lot of research. That included collection of information from all privately sponsoring groups in the region, including number of families sponsored, number of family members, children, individual history and background, including skills and language proficiency, medical needs, and other needs. Second, we had to devise a strategy and planning based on the refugee demographic in the distribution in the region, the needs that were identified, and other information based on the collected data. Thirdly, we did an assessment of existing resources and needed resources in the region. Our research results provided a base for creation of a program, including needs, challenges, and existing resources. This is how we identified that a challenge could be turned into an opportunity. Employers in our community had labor force needs, and we could match those needs with the needs of refugees in order to help them become self-sustaining. Particularly agricultural work in Ontario was experiencing a changing environment and was in need of a reboot. Many of the refugee families had backgrounds in farming, so we created a program called Farmers Feed the World, which was a pilot project that aimed to bring financial stability to refugee families in the long term. So the Syrian refugee crisis is an example of how we were able to turn labor shortages into opportunity with the help of the employers in our community. So now we're facing another crisis, the current COVID-19 pandemic. It's important to point out that this crisis is not just affecting a select group of QLIP, a select group that QLIP can target to provide a solution for, but that we're all being affected worldwide, and that has left us and the community we're trying to help reeling a bit from the shock. However, of course, we have mobilized, and our first response was to look to the healthcare networks that we had in place to take the lead to guide us, especially in the initial stages of the pandemic. Aside from the obvious health issues, one of the immediate consequences was that essential services were becoming urgent. We noted that newcomers were providing many of those essential services needed, including our international students. So we utilized and ramped up the programs we already had in place to assist newcomers with work in essential services, such as our economic development through immigration program, which matches newcomers with employers, and our Quinte STEP program, which is provincially funded and also provides matches with employers as well as training in specific industries. Other issues, well, not other issues, but issues such as racism and discrimination magnified due to the isolation and unrest during the pandemic. This has led to collaboration with community and QLIP members on ongoing initiatives such as Stand Together Against Racism, which is a web forum that one of our members put on that we were part of. The Belleville Inclusion Committee, which we have been on for quite some time and have a strong role in, and standing together against gender-based violence, which we recently participated in as well, another webinar that happened recently in our community. We've been able to provide data and resources regarding immigrants in the community to health-based agencies, and we're currently on the steering committee for one of our stakeholders to initiate a research project on health needs with a focus on newcomers and other vulnerable groups. We've also initiated our own surveys to newcomers through the settlement services, specifically focused on their needs during the pandemic. One of the things that we do yearly is a regional summit of stakeholders to jointly share current trends affecting newcomers in the Quinte region. At this summit, we are planning on doing discussions of current gaps, proposed solutions, and sharing of resources. This summit was supposed to take place this year in 2020, but due to the pandemic, we have had to postpone it to 2021. The crisis we face in community can bring many challenges, but can also force us to recognize gaps more readily and put into motion the solutions we may have already had waiting in the wings. The pandemic in particular has created a shockwave affecting all aspects of life in our community. But QLIP has benefited from our longstanding relationship with our stakeholders, and we've been able to provide an informed response. This has also been strengthened by working together within a settlement agency, which facilitates a unified and coordinated response in times of crisis. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Sam and Kat, for sharing your presentations. So much has come up. I have pages and pages of notes. I want to remind everyone to go on to slido.com and put in the code P2P 2020, and do send us all your questions that you have so far. And with that, I would like to pass it on to Agnes Jeru, who is the coordinator of Immigration Partnership Saskatoon. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, hello everyone, and good afternoon, good morning for some of you. I want to acknowledge that I'm in Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis, and I want to recognize that. So today I'm going to talk about a young lady trying to effect change in the community while we are having challenges and crises in the community as well. So I'll be talking about the See Me As I Am campaign and the Be an Ally campaign. But first, I will talk about the participants of the campaign. This campaign, or the participants, is from the Immigrant Advisory Table. It's a group of 18 newcomers in Saskatoon that met and wanted to share with the community, to let them fit in their shoes for a moment and check the barriers that they face. Next page, please. So for this campaign, the idea started in the fall of 2019 when the Immigrant Advisory Table met, and they wanted to let the long-time residents know that. And this progressed into a See Me As I Am campaign, where they really wanted to produce this as a why care piece for the community, and to let the community treat them and see them as they really are. And we are going to play the See Me As I Am now, and then I'll proceed to the next. Okay, great. So that's the BNLI. Yeah, that's the BNLI video, and that BNLI was made after the protest in June about George Floyd's death. So that's when we made that BNLI. We were trying to respond to the concerns of the people on the streets of Saskatchewan. When that happened, we had several thousand people from all walks of life, races, and cultures that came in support. And all the protests, the assumptions, the perceptions, the prejudices these people were trying to bring forth were actually assimilated in the BNLI campaign. And for now, to have a better understanding of where we started, we are going to show you the See Me As I Am campaign. It's a challenge, and then we move on from the next slide. Thank you. Let's play the See Me As I Am.
How do you see me?
As I really am?
Do you see my master's degree?
My PhD.
The 4 languages that I speak?
My 20 years of professional experience.
My leadership status in the community.
My work internationally to promote our province.
The home and family I had to leave behind.
The sacrifices that I've made to be here today.
What I have to offer.
Or do you only hear my accent?
The way I speak English.
Do you only see the clothes I'm wearing?
My skin that is a different color from yours.
My qualifications that you don't easily understand.
Do you see only
what's different about me? Or even see me as a drain on the system?
I came to Saskatoon to work hard
and contribute. But starting out is hard, really hard.
If I'm going to have an opportunity to succeed here,
find a home,
a job,
a family doctor,
a vehicle,
a school for my children,
to be with my family.
I need you to actually see me,
understand me,
accept me,
to value and
respect me,
and treat me not as special or as deficient,
but as an equal.
I have my pride.
Just like you do.
I cannot do this alone.
I need you to put yourself in my shoes.
And to be open.
With your mind and with your heart.
To see me as I really am.
After all, I'm a person just like you.
Great. So this campaign is online fully. And as you can see, we have 5 objectives. The main overall objective was to increase the awareness of newcomers to Saskatoon. And we have other objectives as well, like highlighting the work of the Partnership Council, the Immigrant Advisory Table, and the working groups. The BNLI materials for the campaign, they come from the working groups because we are in the level of strategic planning now, and the working groups are working on that. So the materials came from the working group. We also want them to disseminate our strategic plan before it is out to the community. And we also want them to engage the community on 2 levels, seeking their input on how to be an ally to newcomers in Saskatchewan, and to give them the opportunity to share their allyship stories. Next slide, please. So we are also looking for the outcome, and the biggest one was to create opportunity for newcomers, mainstream residents, and Indigenous people to share diversity and challenges and connect cross-culturally. But we also wanted to encourage employers to recruit newcomers to help rebuild the economy as Saskatchewan is reopening. And we also wanted to create opportunities for newcomers to acquire the language in the community. And the last one was to create agency for collaborative ways to make Saskatoon more welcoming. So this actually covers all our strategic areas. because when we did our research, we found newcomers, they need, as a priority here, employment and language. Next slide, please. So we tried to give the message to the people and the questions. We only ask one question. What is one thing everyone in Saskatoon can do to make newcomers welcome? And we are also giving them the tips to the community through the website and the social media, of course. And we are operating from anti-racism and operation perspectives. Next slide, please. The strategy itself, as I said, it's online. So we have our social media, and that's where the posts are going. And the posts are educational or promotional. And of course, we have the BNLI video, the Senior I Am. We also have an infographic there to let people know why they should care. The website is the home base for all content and activities. And that's where we are giving the people the tips and some resources to read. We want to use podcast and other items depending on how the reception of the campaign or the videos will be done. And I'm glad to say that the reception is really good, so we don't have to use the podcast anymore. So, and we are also going to engage the community through interviews to gather the ideas. Offline, we wanted to use the movie theaters, but that is a no-go zone now. We are not working. We were previously working and no one was going there, so we are not going to do that as well. And we are not going to use stickers as well. Everything is safe online and it's active there. So the messaging is the overall objective, which is to highlight the benefits of newcomers and support them in Saskatoon. For the events, we had, of course, the launch date was the 26th of August. This campaign is for 4 months. So we are still in the midst of the campaign. It's still running until December 26th, and it is doing so well. So on the day of the launch, we had an editorial, we had the news as well. We launched online and on television. And of course, we are taking advantage on every community event that comes around for us. Next slide, please. So for this campaign, we have the LEAP co-chairs as the spokesperson. The LEAP has 2 co-chairs here, and Margot Orr, she's director of the Chambers of Commerce, and Ali Abuka is CEO of Saskatoon Open Door Society. So for the partners, because as you saw from the videos, we are launching this with all our partners. The partners' responsibility is to support the campaign publicly, and they also need to share and amplify with their network and generate broader public participation. So that ends my presentation here, and I'll hand it over to the court here. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much for that, Agnes, as well as I would like to thank Sam, Kat, and Orlando as well. Everything, there seems to be some common themes, as well as some of the things that stood out. So I do have a few questions that seem to be coming up. I would like to pose the first question to each of you. So I will ask it, but then I will ask it again after each answer. So the question that we have here is, how many staff do you each have as part of your LIP, and does that influence how quickly you can respond to crises? And there's a part 2 to that question, which I think I will ask separately, just so that you have the opportunity to respond to this first. And just simply because Samantha is first up on my screen, Samantha, would you mind going first, please?
Sure. So we've, in both the LIPs, both in Durham and in Calgary, we've had a very, very small staff team of 2 2 full-time positions, a coordinator, and then we have a community liaison in Calgary. We also have a 0.6 researcher / research analyst, but in terms of the public-facing work that we do, it's 2 staff. Yeah, so we definitely, it's that relationship piece. So in terms of sort of intelligence in and information back out, we rely on our community partners. But for that immediate crisis response planning, implementation, and doing, it's a very small staff team.
Great, thank you very much. Would Orlando or Kat like to go next?
Sorry, I had some issues with my mute. Yes, well, in our situation, the organization that has been set is we have a very limited staff, but we have a lot of collaboration with all the agencies that work together under the QLEAP facilitation. And as you have seen in the slides, it's divided in different sectors. Depending on what type of crisis, we go to the specific sector that could respond fast and the best way. And then we have specific meetings with them. And then we have a general meeting. And then we propose some solutions that would very quickly, satisfy the response to the issues.
Thank you very much. Agnes, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, please. For our LEAP, it's only 1 staff. But we have the community members, the stakeholders from the sectors actually chipping in to help through this. But staffing is very, very critical for the success of the work of the LEAP. Thank you.
Thank you. So part 2 of this question is asking about the role of your volunteers and whether that influences how you respond to crises or how quickly you respond to crises. And I'll throw it over to Orlando first, so that Sam gets a break from going first. Oh, maybe Agnes, would you like to answer?
Yes, the volunteers are a very central piece on the work of the LEAP. And I'd like to give an example of the videos we've just watched. These videos were made by Immigrant Advisory Table themselves. They volunteered. I would say 3/4 of the participants is the Immigrant Advisory Table. And then we had the Partnership Council members as well participate on the video. And we got the rest of the members from the community. And they volunteered and they brought all the passion. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Those videos are just so powerful. Were they, so you're saying that they were created by the Immigrant Advisory Council and the volunteers that are a part of your working group for this?
Yes, that's correct. The idea came from the Immigrant Advisory Table themselves, and we sat down and created everything from scratch, then involved the Partnership Council. They also participated in the video, and the community as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Sam, would you like to take that question on?
Just echoing what everybody else has said, that it's just so important to have that network of information sharers and information gatherers. We rely on our community partners, especially in times of crisis, to be feeding that intelligence from the grassroots into us so that we can do that sort of dissemination back out again to sort of broader groups. So it's just, yeah, it's all about those relationships again and being that community connector that I think is really, really important.
Absolutely. And along the same lines, I'm also curious as to how has your engagement with your volunteers changed due to the current crisis and, the inability to engage in person?
It was really hard at first. We were meeting much more frequently though, and there's a feeling of disconnection, especially with our Immigrant Advisory Table, where we always, when our IAT came together, we ate together, we chatted, we hung out, and then we had our meetings. So moving from that to sort of a static screen and really trying, until everybody got their equipment worked out to not seeing people on camera at the beginning was hard. But our CLIP Council was meeting monthly early in the COVID crisis. And then when Black Lives Matter really lit literally hit the streets in Calgary. Our CLIP Council started meeting again monthly to talk about sort of anti-racism. What does that mean for CLIP? So we have actually in the last 9 months met much more frequently with our community partners, which has helped with that information back and forth. We're getting used to the technology, but I still, you know, even presenting, like it's, you know, I make jokes and I have no idea if they're funny. It's really hard. So not having that, you know, that give and take and being able to engage with people, it's hard. We had a conversation at the IAT, you know, what's the first thing you're going to do when you sort of see people again? And I've warned everyone, they're all getting hugged, whether they like it or not. So yeah, we have good relationships with our community partners, and it is hard not being able to physically sort of see them and talk to them and get to know them a bit more, especially with our new IAT members. We don't have the same rapport because we've only ever engaged with them online. So yeah, it's hard.
Would anyone else like to add to that? Atnas or Orlando?
Well, in our case, because we are hosted under a settlement services agency, most of the inputs come from our clients. We have constant surveys that we can check the needs of the community, the new immigrants, and then we take it to the main board of the QLEAP, and then we discuss how can we get resources to solve those particular issues in terms of immigration, volunteering. This is all handled to the settlement service agency. So our role is mostly to facilitate and make sure that everything is on the same page.
I just wanted to, I just wanted to echo what Samantha was saying. I'm really, really new to the LIP. I'm a new coordinator, so I've only been here for a few months. So Orlando's here to help answer those kinds of questions that, you know, in the past that I haven't known about. But I also just wanted to echo the fact that because I started during the crisis, and we've all been working from home, I haven't gotten to know our partners very well. And like on a personal level, I get to see them on Zoom, and, you know, and that's how my relationships with them are starting. So I feel that too, that sense of loss in the personal relationships on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah, I would echo that. I started in July, and so I am definitely feeling the same thing. Where it is, I feel there are some benefits to being able to connect online. I mean, there's accessibility, which has increased in some ways, but yes, I miss the in-person connection, so definitely with you on that. So we do have a few more questions that have popped up. One of them is directed at Samantha. So Samantha, I'm going to put you on the spot again. Can you please elaborate on how you see sense of belonging and community connection as an emerging issue, and what projects do you have planned, if any?
Yeah, it's a big thing for us. So we, our CLIP researcher worked with a local academic to do a deep dive into the Federal Community Health Survey on the Calgary specific data. And one of the things that came out was that newcomers had a strong sense of belonging to the community. And when we were presenting on this caused a lot of, sort of triggered a lot of conversations in the community, which was great. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean, like, can we all pat ourselves on the back and Calgary is super welcoming and everybody feels a great sense of belonging? And we're all kind of like, maybe it needs a little bit more nuance than that. Does it mean that they feel really connected to their faith community, to their ethnocultural community, to their literal neighborhood that they're living in? So we knew that we wanted to do some more, sort of more research in that area. In 2017, CLIP did a big survey of all newcomers in Calgary, and we're replicating that in 2021. So we're kind of working with IRCC and with all of our sort of the research arms of our local settlement agencies and community partners to refine that survey right now. But that's one of the things that we want to find out about. What does that mean when newcomers have a stronger sense of belonging to their community? What is their community? And then how do we learn more about that? So yeah, so we're really interested in knowing what that means as well, and how do we foster that, and how do we build on it? And if it's only certain segments of the newcomer community, how do we make sure that we can replicate that in other areas? So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have more information at P2P next year on what that actually means for Calgary.
Great, thank you for sharing that. I'm really looking forward to hearing what comes out of this. We have a question that again can be addressed to anybody. Can you describe any permanent changes you have made as a result of what you've learned during COVID? So I would throw it to Agnes first, and then whoever would like to go next.
Maybe I can take that.
Sounds good.
Okay. For my part, I think they are not permanent as such, but I see the permanency in the sense that the sector and the service providers, they now seem to actually see each other as collaborators. And that one I see as a permanent piece, and that's very functional for the LIFs. Thank you.
Thank you. Orlando, would you like to go next?
Yes, it's, I wouldn't say that we have, let's say, made any permanent changes because we don't know how this is going to be in the next few months. So we are still in the wait and see to try and make a few adjustments for whatever comes in our way. It's still times of uncertainty at this point.
Right, I feel like we're continuously adapting to whatever's coming up. Right, Samantha?
Yeah, I would agree. I think something that will stay, will stick around, and I think we'll learn how to use it better is online. Figuring out how to have some of those meetings. I would imagine that our CLIP council probably will like to meet online. These are super, super busy people, and physically coming together just takes up more of their time. So I suspect that our CLIP council meetings may stay online. I think we've got a good format for that now, and we've figured out ways of sort of getting people engaged. I think more of the sort of the IET, the working groups where you need a bit more of that sort of discussion back and forth, and a little bit more less formal, may go. But again, echoing what everybody else said, we just, who knows what's going to happen in the next year. We may not be back in person for quite a while still. So yeah, I think the community, the collaboration that's happened across the sector has been really positive, and I think that will stay. And I think the awareness around sort of the disproportionate impact of something like a pandemic or an economic crisis on newcomers and on racialized newcomers. I think that has really hit home for agencies and organizations who may not have thought about that before. And I think that will change the landscape of how we do the work in Calgary. And so I think that is probably a permanent change in just awareness and advocacy work. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. It's highlighting the inequities and just bringing them forward. Would anyone else like to add anything there? No, okay. So we'll move on to the next question. There was a question about videos for the Immigration Partnership Saskatoon, and there is ipsk.ca is the website where you can find those videos. So please do go ahead and access them there, or you can reach out to Agnes as well. Okay, so here's another question. How will Calgary be able to survey all newcomers?
Oh, if somebody has the answer to this, please share. This is our big challenge right now. So we're kind of simultaneously trying to figure out how do we reach as many people as possible. I was not with CLIP in 2017 when they did the first big survey, but they had a really good methodology. They got permission from Loblaw's Superstore to hand out postcards with QR codes on. They were, again, benefits being in the municipality. They got access to sort of transit stations and had an army of students who were handing out cards to people as they were getting on the train and on buses and things like that. So it was a real sort of blanket attempt to hit up as many people as they could. They reached roughly, off the top of my head without going back to look at the methodology, about 4,500 newcomers were reached. We didn't get that many completing the survey, 1,600 completed the survey. But in terms of sort of a broad-based public survey, it wasn't too bad. But of course, now we can't do any of that face-to-face piece. So I've had conversations with transit, but that was in the summer when we were optimistic about, you know, people sort of there being some kind of economic recovery. Alberta, as of last night, we're back under a state of health emergency. So using transit is not really going to help us. So community newspapers, our community brokers, literally, I mean, social media, saturating social media. We've got a list of about 12 different tactics. And I'll let you know again whether this works. This is where it's all unknown territory, right? And just not being able to do that face to face. Even our, you know, our community partners that we could normally sort of rely on getting into classrooms and things. So many of those classrooms are not face to face either. So yeah, we're going to get really creative and keeping our fingers crossed that. I would really love it if we can sort of exceed the participant rate from last time, but we'll see. It's an experiment. Everything's an experiment right now.
Can I suggest something? Because I know the question was for Calgary specifically. What do we do on the settlement agency side? We have an intake form. And although we don't have all the newcomers that move into the cities, we kind of put together parts of the surveys or the questions that we need for the QLEAP into the intake form. We also act very collectively with the colleges. We have over 1,000 international students and they are part of this as well. So that's how we get a lot of the information that we need in terms of planning for eventual gaps that might exist for newcomers when they arrive.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah. Agnes, would you like to add any tips and tricks on how to survey newcomers?
Yes, the other avenue we used in Saskatchewan was through the ethnic stores and supermarkets and ethnic cuisine restaurants and so on. So we do exactly like what Quinte or Ferro is saying.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. Sam, there is another question here asking if you could please, if it is possible to customize data at a municipality level through your data dashboard, as currently the data is available only at the national level.
Okay, so what you need to do, and this is, you have to kind of dive a little deep. So along the horizontal navigation bar at the top, you'll see it's got BC, PNT, da-da-da-da-da-da. So wherever you are, do your drop down, and then that'll take you to the provincial level data. PNT is Prairies Northern Territories, and then that breaks down into LIP. So the dashboard is specifically designed to show the custom geographies for each LIP. So for example, for Calgary, it's not such a big deal. I can go to StatsCan and I get the data for the Calgary LIP really easily. But for for Pembina Valley, which is basically all of southern Manitoba, that's multiple jurisdictions for StatsCan, so that's why the data is customized to your LIP. So your LIP coordinator at some point would have been in contact with our researchers here to give us your custom geography. And then we've bought the data from StatsCan, and that's what populates the dashboard. If you on the left-hand column, there's more links that you can click on, and that'll give you sort of the how-to guide on how to use the dashboard. But if you do have any questions, if you still can't find what you're looking for, just shoot me an email and I'll put you in touch with Marisa, who's our researcher and our data dashboard guru, and she can answer any questions that you have.
Great, thank you so much for that. One more question. Did any LIPs work with other community agencies within their communities to address the inequities of newcomers and others in their communities? So Agnes, would you like to go first?
Yeah, our LIP is a young LIP. It's like 3 years now. And what we are doing with other community agencies, I'll reference this with the work we are doing now, which is the campaign, is to actually collaborate with the community agencies through the campaign and the issuing statements not serious statement, but doing the post and repost about the campaign on issues of inequality as well, because they are there. As you can see from the video, we have shorter videos that we are playing, because no one will play a 3-minute video. So we have these short ones that they are tailored to specific issues in the community, and they are posting that and sharing.
Great, thank you so much. Samantha?
I think one of the roles of a LIP is really to amplify those voices of the people in your community who are working on things like this. We've got a number of our settlement agencies do really amazing work around anti-racism training, working with other community agencies and organizations. Action Dignity in Calgary does tremendous work. So we just make sure that we're always amplifying their voices and sharing their programs and services out to our broader community and our networks.
Great, thank you. Orlando, would you like to add anything briefly, as we're almost out of time?
Yes, just briefly, we partner with all the municipalities. They all have signed the United Nations agreement or accord for anti-racism. We also work very collaboratively with the college that has put a lot of webinars in terms of anti-racism. And it's been a work in progress. We also work with the police services for the what they call the situational table in case of emergencies in families that are very deprived of the equities in the area. Instead of going on enforcement, we try to advocate for them and make sure that we can solve the problem before the police gets involved, like mental health and all this stuff.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. So as we're out of time, I just want to take a moment to thank you all. Thank you, Samantha, Kat, Orlando, and Atnas for your time, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. Thank you also to our attendees for sharing your questions and thoughts. I thank you for your time and attention. I encourage you to network and visit the exhibitors and posters. Most importantly, I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.